Folks, welcome back. Hope you've enjoyed your cartoons. Hopefully you've gotten your errands out of the way, ready to truly enjoy this weekend. I'm Maniac, and we are on WhaT's, TrainWreck, WaTching, and there's only one answer if you've been watching that show. It is the newest Marvel movie, Black Widow. Let's get our professionals. Let's get our analysts in here. Of course, you know, the Micah Man, and of course, Casali Files. Gentlemen, we have been graced from the gods with another Marvel cinematic film. Reactions, how's it feel? Are you still in the afterglow?
I'm still riding high that we just witnessed a brand new Marvel movie. It's been so long since Far From Home 2019. But yeah, aside from just, watching a new movie, the shows have been stellar and amazing, but just to watch a movie and get back into, that side of the world has just been pretty great.
It was so great yesterday, like the whole, just waking up in the morning and knowing, damn, I'm going to see a big movie feel tonight.
It's like Christmas morning.
It really is. And then just all day waiting for it. We get up to the theater, the whole shebang just felt great. Felt like, walking back in the park, everything felt back to normal in there. Full theater for a Black Widow screening. It was great. It felt like a normal when I was a little kid going to see a movie at a movie theater again. Mm-hmm. And we were talking about it earlier. It was just weird. It was weird to realize that it was gone for so long because it felt like it felt so natural. But it definitely is it was a great enjoyable movie. I'm glad that it was the first one they put out because I think no matter what, it was fun the whole way through. There was a lot of action all the way through. There were no real lulls in there or anything. So I think it was a good installment to come back in the theaters. And it was a great take on a character that we haven't gotten to spend enough time with.
Most definitely. A little background and a little foreground on the Black Widow character, Natasha Romanoff. Let's jump into it here. And real quick, before we start getting into the plot specifics and the character actions, what would you say to someone walking into the theater or a friend of yours that, said, oh, you saw Black Widow? I'm going to see it tomorrow. How was it? I would say, exactly like you said, Micah, not a lot of lulls in the movie, constantly keeping it moving. I would say maybe, in my opinion, the first half feels a little bit disheveled, but they're kind of using that to unite and get on the same page for the second half of the movie. And yeah, I think it lives true. If you like Marvel movies, then you like Black Widow, would be my take. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely do feel that, at certain points too, this definitely felt like maybe this would have been it would fit better in the earlier phases, particularly maybe phase 2 and phase 1. But overall, I didn't care because it was just so great to finally get to, have a movie centered on our favorite Natasha Romanoff, Scarlett Johansson. I think that was it. At the end of the day, it was well deserved. She deserved every part of this movie, and she's brought it with every movie since. We got to meet her in Iron Man 2 and then in the Avengers movies, and they always kind of hinted at her backstory, at least, a lot of stuff that we get to find out and realize in this film. But I think, yeah, at the end of the day, it was just so great to have her time to shine, especially with, the sacrifices that she made in Endgame. So it was well deserved. Absolutely.
What I would tell my friends going into this movie is expect a woman-led James Bond movie directed by Michael Bay. That's pretty much my little description.
Yeah, I can see that.
That's not terrible. I like it.
There's a little bit. There's a lot of. It's a great. Honestly, I like what you said about the first half, Maniac, because I think if they did what they should have done and ran these Black Widow movies 5, 6, 7 years ago, that first half of the movie could have been damn near its own movie, with all the action that's going on, and then this whole second half could have been a second movie. They did try to throw a lot in there, and that's why it's moving throughout the whole way. I think they tied it together well, but I do agree that I wish it could have been not in 2021, but 2014, 2015 to see this on screen kind of in conjunction with where they were in the timeline and everything, because it would have been interesting to see how we would have felt about her knowing more about what she was going throughout all those times that we saw her in Iron Man, Avengers, what was really on her mind that whole time.
And it's possible the producers and the Marvel execs agree because they worked on their own to tie this into events that would happen later in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Infinity War and such. One thing I would say before we get into the actual movie itself, really small cast compared with a typical like Marvel movie. I get that you obviously have your superheroes, but like even you look at a movie like Ant-Man, you have, like his crew of friends, you have the ex-wife and the daughter, you got the Prim family or whatnot. This basically, you just had the Russian family. You had Scarlett Johansson, Natasha, Florence Pugh as Yelena. You had David Harbour and Rachel Weisz as Alexei and Melina. Besides that, you're really just getting Drekov and just a couple of other fluff characters. So I was really impressed with how they were able to carry this movie for a 2+ hour runtime. I will give credit where credit's due. And where we start off that 2+ hour runtime is in a 1995 sequence. I mean, let's face it. If you're going to go back to the bread and butter, might as well make them 90s kids, right, Casale?
Yeah, I mean, even right from the start. I mean, just to see, them as Natasha as a little kid and introducing, what comes to be her family was cool. I mean, again, it really did feel like the beginnings of like a spy thriller. Like the father working and coming home to warn her family of what's coming. But I mean, even the relationship that she had with Yelena of I forget the actress that actually played the young version of Yelena, but she's actually been in a lot of stuff that I've noticed recently, especially I don't know if you guys ever saw the house on Haunting, the House of Hill House. But Haunting of Hill House. But so it was cool to see, at least some familiar faces and the mom and dad bringing it and of course. But it was just, I mean, it was cool. I mean, who's to say? I didn't even really think we were going to get this far back when we were heading into a Black Widow movie because there's just been so much talk about what this movie is truly going to be. But it was definitely a nice thing to see.
If you want the proof that the Ohio taking over the world meme is real, it's the fact that Marvel came back and the first thing they showed you in their Marvel movie was just Ohio. I got a good chuckle out of that. But Casale, everything you said exactly. I really liked the S.H.I.E.L.D. connection in there, even though we didn't find out any more. Well, we did find out why they were at S.H.I.E.L.D. was after them. But we didn't find out as much of how Natasha ended up with S.H.I.E.L.D. in the story. And I kind of was hoping that history would kind of tie all back together around. But it's just great. It's great to see them be able to go back and be like, oh, she's been on this side. She understands both sides so well from even such a young age. Like she's been inundated with it her whole life. And it was a great way to show that. It was one of the most insane plane scenes I've ever seen in a movie. I don't know how they were like,
oh my God,
not get hit by shots there. I mean, I guess Melina did get hit by one there, but it was, I mean, David Harbour is on the wing hanging out there. Like it was chaotic in that. And it was interesting. I was like on the edge of my seat right at the beginning. I wanted to know where they were going to end up when they're going on the road. Like I didn't know what we were going to see coming out of that. And, this movie was a treat because knowing that everybody was spies, you knew that there was always going to be something fishy around the corner, right? Like, and it kind of set that tone early on, and that was a good way to keep you on your toes and kind of keep it moving along. But I really enjoyed the little bit of setup, the little bit of background, the little bit of the Midwest that we got to see there. And I have some words for Yelena at some point about her willingness to keep going back, but we'll get into that at another time.
Most definitely. And then it goes again, the beginning of this movie is kind of like shuffling a deck of cards. And it was hilarious how you pointed out S.H.I.E.L.D. has been kind of omnipresent in Natasha's life. You obviously see the vehicles chasing, the family here as they're getting ready for the plane getaway. Then 24 years later, you have her walking out into like the Amazon or whatever to recruit Dr. Banner to come on a S.H.I.E.L.D. mission. So you really see it's very interesting the transformation that this, Black Widow Natasha Romanoff character has undergone. And we get to see a little bit and a lot of that in this film. What did you guys think of like this first act of the movie? Because we were talking about it in the pre-show and I've kind of alluded to it. I thought it was a little bit jumbled, but there were a lot of, storylines, a lot of sacred timelines that they were, kind of uniting so that they could go forward. Exactly like you said, Micah. It was almost like the end of this movie, say like right up to the pre-dinner scene could have been like its own movie, like especially with the prison escape, which we're going to get into, spoiler alert. But were you guys satisfied? I mean, Cassell, you hold these movies with high integrity. I know that. So talk to me about how you viewed that first act.
Well, I mean, to be honest, it did seem a little jumbled. At least, I mean, it was, to me, it was kind of mixed of like a checklist of like, okay, this is Black Widow. We're going to get Budapest mentioned, like everything like that we've learned from her thus far. And I mean, also like setting up, like it was cool to like set up her family. But like, I felt, to be honest with you, I felt even right from the beginning, we kind of just jumped in there. Like we, like seeing David Harbour, jump on a plane was kind of like, okay, so if people don't realize that he's the Red Guardian, then people are going to be a little confused. Like, why? How can he do this so far? And then it kind of fast forward into the aftermath of Captain America: Civil War, which, I mean, going into this movie, we all kind of knew that was going to be the case. This was going to take place during that timeline because, obviously, spoilers, after Endgame, we don't have any Black Widow anymore. So I thought that was kind of cool to go back, but it kind of was just like a bit like catch up. Like they name drop like Cap and Iron Man and that the Avengers broke up and all that stuff. So, I mean, of course, we're well trained at this point. If you haven't seen any of the movies thus far, you're kind of going to be going in with a blank slate. But, it definitely took a little bit time to catch up and just trying to find its place. But I think like after the first act, for sure, especially once she met up with her family, that's when it kind of really like stuck together a lot more. And, just felt like, okay, now we know what we're going towards.
The benefit that I think this movie, like as I said earlier, like it's weird that I wish I would have seen it 6 years ago, whatever. But now we've got Disney Plus and everything; they can do the chronological order. And I think that whole first act was to kind of give us that it was for Disney Plus for 10 years from now, for people that are going to be watching through and they're going to probably encourage Disney. I'm sure is going to encourage the chronological order of these films to be rewatched like that. And then so I would be interesting when I go through like inevitably another Marvel rewatch at some point, watching it and seeing Black Widow in the kind of context of being right after Civil War and just watching that character develop throughout those movies. I mean, her interactions were so great in Civil War and Winter Soldier that it really would kind of. It is kind of a perfect spot to kind of revisit that character. Like I was watching Winter Soldier the other night, and she's so great in that movie, showing like, and just those little parts that they've given her. Like you knew that there was that. First of all, Scarlett Johansson's gonna be able to pull off whatever she wants to pull off. Like, and she had an EP credit on this. I'm sure her hands were all over how the character was portrayed in this movie and everything she wanted to do. But it just made her feel like. It gave a good opportunity in this first act to kind of put us in that time frame and also make her feel more like that big part. Like, even though she's not, and they alluded to it, that she's not a super powered person. She's not a god from space, right? Like Elena said at one point, but she is still very worthy of her spot and what she was doing and was still getting as much attention, at least from the people that we saw her interact with. I mean, she was all over. She's on the radio news. Like Steve Rogers and Natasha Romanoff are missing. Like she was still that notoriety. And I think that they wanted to sell that over. And I think it worked pretty well to make her seem like the big deal that she should seem.
I agree. This movie absolutely put over the Black Widow character for sure. There was no doubting that after watching this movie that she always belonged in the Avengers. I think they did a good job of that within the Avengers movies themselves, but this was kind of just showing like the works cited for how that final project was actually created. I mean, she's basically like a computer. You look at the way she's acting, you look at a couple of the things from the second half of the film. So it's very crazy to see there. So yeah, we kind of have that first act, and they're targeting towards, kind of getting the band back together. And of course it's all about, I mean, I hate to use vial, but it's almost like a vaccine Casale, for these widows and for the Drekov's victims.
Yeah, I mean, who'd have thought that? Because this movie was supposed to come out, before the pandemic, and who'd have thought that it was very relevant to kind of, of what's going on, especially right now and the events. Yeah, I mean, I thought that was cool. I mean, again, and I don't want to sound too negative because I really did enjoy this movie.
Listen, hey, we like, if you like something, you're allowed to be critical of it. So just to be clear, we all thought it was a decent movie, but that doesn't mean it was without its faults. This movie wasn't Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom. To be fair, okay, come on. Now.
Yeah, I don't want to get into that. There was no clone making little girls, but yeah, I mean, and we'll kind of go into this more later. But I did think that there was some particular plot devices that kind of just showed up, like the pheromone that made the Black Widows lose their mind control and whatnot. Again, though, but that's the thing; it still kind of fits within the story that they're trying to tell. So I think for that, I don't completely give it oh, that's bad, because as long as it supports the story and what it's going for, I mean, that's what that's what we all shoot for. Nothing's perfect, but it was just, I mean, it was cool, and again, just to see Yelena's story, especially the way it begins, that she was still under mind control this whole time, and that she was able to find a way to get out and move on. I thought was pretty cool, and especially a great introduction for her.
Yeah, and this movie, that's a great point, because this movie kind of served a dual purpose, right? As much as it was to give us the proper due with Black Widow, we know that Yelena, Florence Pugh's character, is going to be around for a while. She signed on for at least a couple other projects, and they wanted to get her involved. She's a huge part of the Black Widow lore from the comics. She's been involved with Natasha multiple times. They have a long history in the comics together too. Mm-hmm. And we've seen it. I mean, that's been a theme of all these Marvel shows, right? Is the lesser known characters, but that have had long time histories kind of keep popping up. It's great what they can do with it. And she was great. I mean, that was what, honestly, as much as I've always loved the Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow character, Yelena was the most enjoyable part of this movie most of the time. Just her the making fun of the pose was, I mean, it's the classic Marvel humor that's at the wrong spot sometimes, but still, when you knew, it was still you could feel everybody laughing in the theater at that moment when she drops down at the one point towards the end and does Natasha's pose, and she's oh, she's disgusted by it. And it's just those little moments. She was great at all those little comedic relief moments, everything like that. But yeah, it was I'm curious to know what you guys we are all honestly, I'd be doing Superman poses too. They're ripping off, that's a little bit off of Deadpool though too.
But yeah, the superhero landing.
I mean, between classic Loki, floating away as debris as that fan theory, Marvel has just been so successful that it is not even a problem for them to go meta 10 times out of 10 and just comment on the fan base.
I think at this point too, they already know what they're doing. We've gone thus far with how many movies in the bank, so they're just having fun with it while also treating it with respect. I do want to also bring up too, because we mentioned her name. Florence Pugh was the cast of Yelena. Now, she's actually been somebody that I've been watching for a while. She was in the Paige UFC movie, Fighting with My Family, and she did a really good job of that. She was also in a great Ari Aster type horror movie called Midsummer that I don't know if a lot of people didn't really see it when it came out. I know it didn't really do that well in the box office, but people who did, and especially horror fans like me, it was a very, very demented, scary movie, and it will just pure original at that point. The way that he tackled Swedish tradition, but I thought also she did a magnificent part in that movie. I mean, she was just terrifying. So even when they cast her in Black Widow, it just kind of fit. It's okay, she deserves, because everybody, they're going to get their Marvel call eventually, and everybody's going to show up eventually in a Marvel project, whether show or television. So it was very nice to see her added into the MCU, and I think she did a perfect job playing Yelena.
Midsummer fucked me up for like days.
Oh
That's
my God.
besides the point, but that movie was crazy, and that's what I was too. That's why I was excited about the casting too. Was exactly what you just said.
Mhm.
Yelena's gonna be she's gonna be an important part, I think, and it's gonna be enjoyable for everybody. I think that she was just. I think she was just great, and it was a great way. She was great in the moments with Natasha too, because they had to sell that connection a lot, and we didn't have a lot of history on it, so we needed them to. They really needed in those moments, and that's in one of those moments in the first act too. That great. I didn't know whether they were actually like fight. I couldn't tell when they first met if they were actually fighting or if that was like a sister like just an intense sister assassin fight, not actually gonna kill each other and all this, and then they're like, all right, we're good, we got it out of our system. And it was such a great moment though.
I think it definitely was meant to be like a Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Thor and Loki type, like we're fighting but we're not actually trying to kill each other situation for sure. But they unite and they figure out that we got to take down Drekov. Drekov is the guy behind the Black Widows, behind the project, and he's using them obviously for more than people understand and more than even Natasha and her sister realize at this point. But it all goes back. Tell me if you've heard this in a Fast and Furious movie, Casale. It all goes back to family. So we've got to go break
the Vin Diesel meme.
Well, this will open it up for tons of opportunities because family obviously a huge theme in this movie, and so we go and we need to break the dad out of prison, the Red Guardian, the Crimson Dynamo.
Yeah, Mr. David Harbour. Man, first off, just that scene alone going into when he's just sitting at the table and he's doing like arm wrestling. He's been bragging, saying that he took down Captain America and just taking out everybody, and people are trying to fight him, and he's just winning everyone. Like the big guy comes up to him, and David Harbour also has been somebody that I've been watching a lot. He's been one of my favorite parts of Stranger Things. So I thought he did, and this was one of the. Because he's been breaking out a little bit more, like he hasn't had too much like big stuff, and I think the MCU. How bigger can you get? And he brought it. He was great. And his humor too, like everything that he does with when he eventually like meets with the family and stuff like that. Like he just was such a good time, and just. And it's good too because this is a great way to represent that fat people can be superheroes. So enough with fat Thor and Endgame. We got more coming in the MCU. So come on, represent the fat people. Let's go.
Most definitely. I would say, Micah, that Harbour with this character, Alexei, showed more like of a transformation than we saw from any other character in the movie. He was, the strong patriarchal type in 1995. We see him kind of beaten down in the prison, like mentally, emotionally. He's got to tell those stories to kind of make it up to him. Then spoiler alert, they're able to get him out of the prison. And he kind of goes on a completely different transformation from them. Kind of like how you're talking about the second half of the movie, or it could be its own movie at this point.
Yeah, it was hard to find what his motivation was throughout the whole time, right? And I think it changed throughout the whole time. And that's one of the biggest things about this movie is that I really think they were trying to keep you guessing with all these characters' motivations because we're dealing with all these people were spies, like, and you couldn't trust any of them for any amount of time. And I think with Red Guardian, I think he was the most pure out of that though. Like he just wanted his glory, right? Like he just wanted his respect. Essentially, he just put respect on his name, and that's what drove him to do everything that he was doing for Natasha when they in 1995. He was doing that because he was promised the glory after, right? Like he wanted to get back into the field. That was his big thing. Did he really fight a Captain America? Like what we learned from Falcon and Winter Soldier about the Captain America missions that were sent out. Is he lying, or did he actually run into some historic Captain America that we'll learn about if we go more into lore? That's something I'm really wondering. Like if we're going to explore his character more, that would be an interesting twist in there.
I'm inclined to believe it. On first watch, I wasn't, and then I was reading some reviews or whatnot, but he fibs about it in the prison, or at least the guy calls him out on a fib about it. But then he's asking Natasha if he ever mentions him. So why would he be doing that unless he's just completely delusional? And maybe he is completely delusional at this point as you see him putting on the suit at the family dinner. But they break him out. They get the family back together. Vodka is drinking. I mean, what a great vibe in this for a group that isn't truly quote unquote a family. What a great family scene.
Yeah, they are. It was, it was the perfect, like the awkward family get together that you're at, and everybody's kind of annoyed with each other, and you're just getting all the little sidebars. Natasha, I feel like we've all been either Natasha or Yelena in both those situations where Natasha's just like fed up, just like talking shit right away, and Yelena's just gonna just make you do whatever and take the bottle of vodka and walk away. It was awesome to see, and I really liked Melina. Honestly, Melina was one of my favorite, one of the bright spots in this movie, in this scene, in these scenes in general, just because she was like, I don't know. It was weird to see her be able to just like welcome them in as openly as she did. Like she was ready. She pulls out a sniper and is ready to take them out, and then welcomes them in like family again. But in the beginning of the movie, you could tell that she had actually become attached to like this family that she had. She was doing everything she could to like make it normal for them and everything. And I think that was a great way to see her reaction of her welcoming them all in and trying to make it just seem as normal as possible. And then they get that, and then the nice symmetry of them actually getting that dinner, obviously in a very situation, but the dinner that we thought we were going to see at the beginning that ended up turning into the beginning act of the movie with the chase and everything. And I think that was the nice little arc for Melina, is that she kind of got to fulfill what she really enjoyed in the beginning there.
It's a damn good point. That's why we can bring him in here on What's TrainWreck Watching. You find out things about these movies you didn't know even when you watched it. So we are on basically at this point to the last third / second half of Black Widow. It's all about a quest for that red room. And it turns out, I mean, they're not going to have to work too hard to find it, guys.
Yeah, I mean, once after the family dinner, they actually do get a little interaction with the enemies, and we kind of get a little tease, if you will, a little switcheroo, as I call it. I mean, eventually we realize once they find out. I mean, so they realize that the Red Room is literally a fortress in the sky. I mean, this is classic MCU because everything is, whether a sky beam or just floating. I mean, we've gotten that before.
I actually thought they stole this one from Avatar, Casale. You have a little safe haven up in the sky amongst the clouds. Come on now.
Yeah, but I mean, it was, after getting intercepted. I mean, even seeing like Melina, kind of take control and switch sides, everyone was like, wait, what's going on? Like, it was just, again, a complete switcheroo. And, it was just, I guess, it was setting up into this next act, and it was a good way to do it. Yeah.
Again, any way you could tie in the other movies for a Marvel movie is a win. So when they do the face technology that you saw was so prominent in the Winter Soldier, and they use that, it's kind of like a nice callback. It reminds you of what's his face, the S.H.I.E.L.D. guy getting his comeuppance in that office. But it reminds you, and obviously nobody is against this guy getting his comeuppance. Drekov, basically, I would say he's not the most powerful villain. He's not the most cunning villain, even though he has a great plan and he obviously is in a better position than our protagonist realized. But my goodness, is this dude the scumbaggiest villain in the Marvel universe by far?
Yeah. I mean, I was afraid too, especially once we get into the reveal of Taskmaster, that it was kind of going to fall in the trap of, some superhero movies. They have the notion of bringing in too many villains, but I think both, played their part and kind of, surfaced the story at least. I mean, again, this is where I kind of get a little iffy about it again when, we get the classic scene where Scarlet and I'm Drekov was, face to face after all these years. I mean, let's face it, she thought Drekov was gone, so it was cool to see them face off. But then once they get into he put a pheromone on him and whatnot, and he couldn't, and Black Widow couldn't attack him. I thought that was kind of a little okay, this is getting a little too plot devicey again. But again, it was just still cool to I mean, this is what we wanted. I mean, if you're gonna give us a Black Widow movie, you're gonna want it to come full circle and get to her past. I mean, that's what everybody's trying to run away from, I guess, sometimes. So I mean, that was cool. And to realize, I mean, the big thing, I don't know if you guys want, well, I mean, we've said it already, that Taskmaster turned out to be
let's talk some Taskmaster here. Yeah. So that's the twist. A villain that can basically replicate, mimic any moves that they see. So you get some nice displays of some Captain America fighting, some Widow fighting. You got some Black Panther fighting there for sure. Was there any other combat that I missed, or was I snoozing?
Well, in the very beginning, I mean, Taskmaster was literally watching the airport fight from Civil War. I mean, I saw some Hawkeye too. A little. I don't know what you saw, Mika, but
yeah, he was. That was an interesting take on the Taskmaster character it was a combination. Me and my brother were talking about it a little bit. There's a character, Prometheus, that uses the technology to mimic, and Taskmaster traditionally in the comics more just straight up, I'm just a martial arts genius and can mimic whatever. So it was an interesting take on the character to do Taskmaster. But Taskmaster is awesome, in such a cool way to have Natasha confront everything, right? Oh yeah, you've been hanging out with all these people, now just fight every single one of them every time you interact with this guy. And that first fight, I mean, that was you knew the second she got in that car leaving that camper early in the movie that it was going to be bad. It was going to be danger for them, right? It was such a great introduction to the Taskmaster character. But Drekov, man, first of all, Natasha must have been desperate to get out. And you could see why she was desperate to get out from under Drekov's thumb there, because it was a sloppy move to go. The fact that the reveal was that, they bombed her and everything, and she thought that she had killed Drekov's daughter, but she had never checked because she really just wanted to get out of the KGB and just go to S.H.I.E.L.D. and try to do something right by her, right? And now it's all coming back, like you said, it's all coming full circle, coming back around. But I really thought that was the most James Bond moment in that movie, was with that whole scene where Natasha's just in there and she's just having a conversation with Drekov. I know she couldn't do anything to him, but it was still just a little bit much. Okay, how long is the villain hero gonna sit here and have just
seriously face to face with no action? Yeah, it truly was in Spectre when he's talking with him at the end. It's the exact same thing for sure. And I just want to sweep through this because obviously we are getting down. We got Taskmaster as Drekov's daughter, biggest twist in the movie for sure, because obviously Natasha is kind of undergoing these whole decades with this idea that she killed Drekov's daughter and wasn't able to really make that right. Wasn't ready to take that red off her ledger, which is also the dad goes, your guys' ledgers must be dripping red or gushing red. He's talking about it all happy. But we got it. You guys might be surprised to find this out, but the internet had some opinions on this Taskmaster. Now I gotta say, when I watched it, I enjoyed it for sure. It was kind of like Game of Thrones. You have people who read the books and they get upset by things that happen in the show and things like that. So let's look at some of these takes that are a little bit more popular. I mean, you can see by the action on these tweets, these are some well-respected individuals. Again, not saying he fucked up, but apparently this guy was just a little bit more alpha in the comics. Kind of similar to how this week we were talking about how Loki got nerfed in the movies, so that he was more scrawny fighting and magician guy versus an absolute god of mischief. You have that take. This one's a little bit more to the point. Got that. You got that with the reveal of Taskmaster. And again, this is more of a show take, but again, a lot of action on these. Action on social media doesn't mean much. If going viral is kind of its own magic of mischief in itself, but clearly some respected opinions to be getting thousands of likes on these takes. But again, kicking off this, discussion of Taskmaster heading into the third act and the, crazy action scene there. I enjoyed Taskmaster.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, we've seen this also, what's going on in Loki right now. I mean, Marvel has such a span of characters that they have so many, especially now, after the accusation with Fox. So it's always cool, and interesting to what they can do with and twist the story. And I think Taskmaster, was a good addition. I don't know. I remember hearing actually that Taskmaster wasn't originally a Black Widow villain. I think wasn't it supposed to be Ant-Man or something like that? I remember reading before when the movie came out. But I mean, I think whether it's kind of, symbolism that, Black Widow was trying to, show that she can do more and then fight somebody that literally had, that knew everything, every step that she was going to take. I thought that, I thought it worked. I thought it fit in the movie, and especially how it wrapped around with the overall outcome of what Taskmaster truly was. I thought worked for the story.
It's definitely not the comic. It's not the comic version of Taskmaster. The comic version of Taskmaster is a badass. He's a mercenary. He's essentially like a Deathstroke, which
okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
like
okay.
That's
okay.
I would compare him more to a Deathstroke type character. So it was definitely a different take, and I could see why people who really, really enjoyed the character weren't happy with the representation. But
yeah, that makes sense.
There's not really a lot. I mean, you could use that. It's a Taskmaster protocol, right? Like that's what they said. So that technology has to exist in the universe now somewhere. Like someone else could pick up that mantle pretty easily and they could make it happen. I wonder if that's the way that they're introducing it, as a way that somebody else can come in and be like, oh, get all this technology and put a little different spin on it, whatever. But I thought, I mean, for what this story needed and that twist, it was perfect. Like, I mean, why wouldn't Drekov, if his daughter survived, just turn her into another killing machine like he is with all these other people and take advantage of it? So I liked it for the story wise. I get why faithful comic book fans would be upset, but that's generally after every Marvel movie. There's going to be something.
Well, yeah, there's like Mandarin Part 2, I guess.
Oh, don't even get me started on that Mandarin.
That was a whole other thing. That ruined Iron Man 3 for me. I had to watch it like 3 more times before I could really
enjoy
appreciate
it, right? Yeah,
for sure.
I remember seeing it first time, and I was just like done. Like I was done.
I said that was the worst. That was the worst Marvel movie that has come out so far. And then I rushed. I was like, okay. But speaking of Marvel movies come out, we get into a classic third act. We got Drekov. We got the Romanoff fam, the squad, all fighting on several levels. We got Taskmaster. We got the widows being freed. We got fight scenes in midair. I mean, what did you guys make of all this? I thought, despite all the nonsense I just said, great third act. I thought they did a nice job kind of putting a bow on this Black Widow story.
Yeah, no, I mean, we got everything that we wanted, cool action scenes, and again, to kind of showcase the true power of Black Widow. Not that she was ever undercut in the rest of the movies, but everyone thought like, oh, we got all these gods, and then we got a secret agent that just knows how to kick and twist people really good. But I mean, it was definitely, she got her moment. She got to face off her greatest fear. Which not only what was going on with Taskmaster, but then to realize that, spoiler alert, that it was Drekov's daughter. So I think that was just on its own. I mean, even when she was, facing off Drekov, but I mean, that alone, it was great action. I mean, what can you always get it within the MCU, and they always bring it and represent. So it was just falling from the sky and jumping everywhere, but it was great.
Iron Man 3 falling from the sky.
Exactly.
Yeah, there we go. Back to Iron Man 3.
There was a little bit of a callback to with when she jumped out and she's going to save people. Widow is, at least. I really loved the whole final sequence with Drekov and then the Widows coming in and fighting Natasha and everything. Marvel's very creative with their boss fights. With their different villain fights that they do, like we've seen with Doctor Strange. Like that was obviously not a typical superhero battle that you've seen, but they like to get creative and do something different, and that's why it was weird at the beginning when the pheromones were introduced and everything. But at least they backtracked and kind of gave it that it was all part of the plan in the long run, anyways. And it was a really like you mentioned earlier, Maniac, it was kind of showing Natasha's worth is basically she's like a computer. Like she's got all this information and can just work so quickly and be able to do a plan like that, because she was locked in that whole time. Like I couldn't tell what she was trying to do, what if she was rattled, if she wasn't. And it was a great way for her to be able to get one over on him, right? Like just being patient, waiting it out, understanding that when Drekov was going to make the mistake that she needed to get one over on him. And it took a lot. I mean, it took Yelena coming in with the save with the very creative vial bomb.
Vial bomb.
That was awesome. Once I saw her strapping those up, I was like, "Oh, this girl, she's resourceful in her own way too." And it's not as crisp as Natasha is in these movies, but she's still, and that's what's going to be interesting. You know, how depending on how they use her going forward to judge those differences, because she's a little more fiery and a little more like from the hip than Natasha has been in the past. So it was a cool way to wrap it all up. Cool way to see to see Natasha and Yelena work together to take down Drekov and all those widows, man. Like all the amount that, you know, the scale that Drekov was having an effect on the world. It offers a lot of opportunities, I think, going forward, which we always love with the Marvel movies.
Yeah.
Dare I say a Spectre callback to when Walt was saying he was responsible for everything else that was going on. This movie, let's face it, it was a great recipe of all the things that make a movie great. And that's why I thought it was a pretty solid movie. Now, before we get into the post-credit scene here, we haven't come up with an official review system yet for what's TrainWreck watching. So we're not going to force it. We're not going to make something happen. Let's give me your knee-jerk reactions on where this movie ranks amongst the 24 now Marvel movies. I'll start it off. I think it is in the middle or the lower part of the third tier. So I put 4 tiers of 6 movies each. I'd say it's somewhere in the middle to lower part of the third tier. So I would say it's about an average Marvel movie. I would say.
Yeah, I would. I mean, again, my thoughts aside, yeah, there was some, you know, plot devices that could have been a little more thought out, but okay, it was a fun Marvel movie. You know, it was well deserved with Black Widow. It was well deserved with I mean, you know, to tell her story finally and to also take place. I mean, you know, even when they were going into, you know, that it was after Civil War, I thought, okay, now we're just going to go back. Like we just saw, you know, what's going on. And especially with her character, you know, dying in Avengers Endgame, you know, I thought, okay, well, why is this the time now? So I think it was a fun, average Marvel movie. I wouldn't say I wouldn't put this in my top 5, but I definitely would keep this probably in my top 10. For sure. I mean, it was just a good time, and the humor was there for the most part. Sometimes it dragged on a bit, but I think it was well cast and everything, and it looked great. I mean, the action scenes alone, there was a lot of Winter Soldier vibes here, and Winter Soldier is one of my favorites, and I think that definitely helped. You know, it's cool to watch a fun little spy movie, and I think this also showcases what Marvel does best is not only they're showcasing their characters, but they're tackling different themes that we've seen throughout Hollywood history. Mm-hmm. So I thought that kind of showed a lot in Black Widow. So, you know, it was just fun. It was just a good, you know, sit down and watch Marvel movie. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd put it in like the 11 to like 13, 14, somewhere around there, like right outside the top 10, but not quite. I don't think it was quite up there with it's not up there with Avengers movies. Kind of live in a plane of their own existence, I think. But
except Ultron.
yeah. When I was thinking, counting in my head, I said Endgame, Infinity War, Avengers, and I was like, oh wait,
there's Civil War. I view Civil War as an Avengers movie.
Yeah, essentially, Avengers 2.5, whatever you want to call it. But it was for just like the character movies. It's got to be considered one of the best. It's one of the better takes on a character. It's a character that we've enjoyed for a long time too. So she got the benefit of at least But I think even if this was like, I think maybe it would have been even more well regarded if it was if this movie was like 2013, the same range for getting Thor and Captain America and stuff like that. I think that it would have fit perfectly in there too, and maybe we think of it in a higher regard as that. But I still think it's it's a little bit above the average line. Not quite one of the elite movies, but a really, really good offering. And they knew what they were doing. They wanted to get back in the theaters. They wanted it to be exciting. There's some, they're taking some chances later in the year. Spider-Man's not a chance. Spider-Man's going to make $1 billion probably. Like that's just what it is. But with Shang-Chi and Eternals, those two movies they're not well. I don't even know. Like I feel like I know a decent amount about Marvel Comics history, whatever. I don't know shit about the Eternals really at all. So that's going to be really interesting to see how they do that going forward. Shang-Chi is obviously, he's an amazing character, but not one that's gotten all this high recognition. So they came in with a plan. They were like, we're going to give a character that they love, and it's going to be high action the whole time. And that was great. And that's always a formula for a good Marvel movie. So I would put it right up there, right outside the top 10.
That is a great point by you, though, Jake. They have been dealing from the bottom of the deck with like the last 10 to 12 Marvel movies, throwing in another Avenger, throwing in some kind of cameo. Black Widow stood on her own here. It was absolutely, there was no Hawkeye, there was no Captain America, there was no Iron Man chiming in, there was no Fury chiming in. I mean, all you got was, the Secretary of State, Ross, coming after, as always. What else is new? So, yeah, solid Marvel movie. You'd be mistaken not to check it out. It's not in the pantheons of like Thor Dark World, which everyone hates, which I love, but it's okay. You got to admit when there's a fault. But we get to, of course, the greatest thing about any Marvel movie, the post-credit scene. And, of course, we've got her back, Valentina Allegra DeFontaine, and she's allergic to the Midwest. Let's go. I mean, this was awesome. It was great to see, that after seeing her in Captain America and Winter Soldier. Very exciting. And, yeah, it looks like, obviously trying to turn Yelena against Hawkeye. My immediate knee-jerk reaction is that it's going to be some fight scene where it comes to light exactly what happened, and that's going to be our new tag team. We're going to have Yelena and Hawkeye. A Black Widow and Hawkeye in Budapest back together again.
Yeah, well, if I'm not mistaken, too, I think she is everything but confirmed to be in Hawkeye.
She is cast for Hawkeye.
Yeah, so, okay, so, and I mean, also, definitely setting up, Young Avengers. I love this idea too, because it kind of goes forth to even the whole theory of people really don't understand, what happened in Infinity War and Endgame, at least like society alone, like the Avengers, obviously they went through it, but like, do people really understand like what Thanos was and what happened and why people were dusted and whatnot? So to have her think, because like we watched Endgame, like Hawkeye didn't just kill, Black Widow. She, Black Widow had to sacrifice to get the Soul Stone. So I think to then go back to Earth and be like, wait a minute, you two left together and one of them came back. How do you explain this? So it just, I think that's a cool twist on, especially getting Yelena involved, because obviously maybe she doesn't even know as far as what actually the stakes were in Infinity War, what they were going against, what the sacrifice that her sister did, which I think would only, show a lot more humanity, especially what she thinks of her sister. I mean, that whole scene when she was, before she showed up, like she was just crying on the grave and just really missing her sister. So I think that's what, once she realizes the sacrifice that was made in order to bring everybody back, I think is definitely going to bring a lot more to Natasha's story.
So the one thing that this could have been an opportunity where Marvel didn't actually, predict anything going forward. I think it could have been a nice moment if it was Yelena just honoring Natasha, and that's kind of what we went out on. It would have been no problem with that. That being said, the fact that and that's supposed to give you a little bit of like the laugh, right? Like they don't ever want to take themselves too seriously. They remind you this is Disney. We're still gonna bring this around.
Well, and not even that too. This was supposed to come out before Falcon and Winter Soldier. This was going to be our introduction to Julia Louis-Dreyfus. So
Yeah.
I think that now it kind of switched up. Now we know what she's up to. I think, I mean, maybe it helps, maybe that's what Marvel, wanted, or maybe they kind of put themselves in a pickle because now we know what she's up to. So it kind of brought a lot more to the story than when this movie was supposed to originally come out.
And of course, that's the magic of editing. That's the magic of having time, because in Captain America and Winter Soldier, she kind of had a long intro, if I remember, with her walking in the high heels, whereas she kind of just abruptly comes into the frame, kind of like Captain Marvel in Endgame in that post-credit scene.
Yeah.
So very interesting. Can't wait to see what happens with Marvel next. Obviously, like we've been talking about on What's TrainWreck Watching, we got Loki next week. We'll finish up that series. We got What If on the horizon, and then exactly like you guys said, Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, Thor, Love and Thunder. It is all on the horizon. Shout out Captain Jack Sparrow. And a huge shout out to Captain of this show, Kasali Files and Micah, for following along. And thank you for following along with this review of Black Widow. We will be back with obviously more films, more TV shows, because it never stops. And if you will go see Black Widow tonight or tomorrow, you're likely to have a good night.
Night.